should one even try to be a business owner?
That's a good question.
Like-
Are we live?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's question number one.
Question number one: Should you try to make money as a Christian? Well, I went to this conference with my parents last weekend, or it was actually during the week. Maybe it was Friday, and Tim Tebow was there.
Oh, nice.
Nick, I don't know his last name. He's the dude. He's like a public speaker. He doesn't have
Arms and legs. Yep.
Kind of the whole thing was talking about like wealth as a Christian and like building family wealth. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. This is like, it seems like they use sometimes Christians as like a free audience because then at the end it's always like, buy my course. You
Right,
know?
exactly.
Like, I see where you're going.
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I kind of get where they're coming from because it's like, yeah, if you don't have money, you can't help people, kind of like.
Including your family.
Yeah, including your family, including like just all these guys. Like, yeah, they had pretty profitable businesses, but like most of them had either a nonprofit or something else that they were, using to further the kingdom. So some people would maybe say that's just a nice PR thing, but I don't know.
So your question is whether a Christian should make money.
Sure.
Well, should a Christian have a job?
Yeah.
Back to you. Why?
Well, I guess the Bible would say
I'm gonna
that
borrow this
those
real quick.
who work deserve to be paid, and that you should like not freeload on people's good wealth, but that you should support yourself, in some way. These are like no nonsense dumbbells right here.
45s?
Yeah, just straight steel.
Heck yeah. So I guess I'd answer your question the same as you'd answer mine. Like, what's the difference between working for the man and working for yourself? Like, is the man inherently evil? Well, then you're working for an evil person. And you just happen to be getting paid. And some might actually think that. For me, I think I'd rather be the decider of everything. Like, especially if I'm a Christian, like I can make my company all the more aligned with Christ's word, with just principles of justice, social justice, and then I can pass it on to my employees and my clients. So all the more, if we should have a job, all the more should we be entrepreneurs and run our own businesses.
But why can't we just share everything, Gear? Why can't we just like all like the kingdom of heaven, Gear? Why can't we just
we should
split everything up evenly?
Well, the kingdom of heaven it might not even be, I mean, we believe in the resurrection of the body, right? So we will be body and soul in the afterlife, but will we need anything?
That's true.
Will we need to eat?
Yeah.
Will we need shelter? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
So we won't really need anything. I think what you could compare it to is like the early church.
Yeah, there you go.
Where they did, share everything as you said. And of course, every socialist who wants to like bring in Christians would say that. I probably don't have the best articulation of why that doesn't work on the large scale, but I guess at its most basic level, in a smaller community, like a household, for example, you have parents who ensure that their kids are working, right, and doing their share.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a huge, town of more than even 100 people, how are you going to ensure that everyone's doing their job?
It's just not practical.
Yeah, in order to deserve their share. So people are just going to slack off. That's how it works. Most people aren't going to strive for excellence for its own sake. Most people are going to do the minimum that they're required to do to not get punished. So
yeah,
and that's exactly what the free market allows. If you don't work, you can't afford rent. You can't afford food. You can't afford the things that you need to survive. And so that's why a lot of people go to work, even though they hate it.
Right.
So that they don't get evicted from their house, and so that they and maybe their kids don't starve. Capitalism is the best of the worst. It's the best system in the fallen world.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to put that.
Or the free market. People distinguish between the free market and capitalism. Right. I'm not going to get into that.
Right.
You know, some would argue that capitalism, where all the capital is held by a few, is problematic, and I agree with that, actually.
Late stage capitalism.
Yeah, but like where capital is, you know, owned by a lot of people, and they are able to produce from that. I mean, that's essentially the free market, and then you go from there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, the family thing that you brought up, because like, I don't know if, well, even in a family, it's like the money's not allocated evenly necessarily. Like the parents work, maybe this is a bad analogy, but like the parents work and the kids don't have to do anything. And it's not like say God designed the family. He didn't make it so that everyone in the family got like the same, and because the family is like the most basic like form of government, I think.
Right.
He didn't make it so that everyone had the same tasks and made the same money, and like obviously the kids aren't going to work to make money, you know, and so.
And they might if the parents are like good parents and they're like you can have like basic shoes and basic clothes,
right.
But if you want like the name brand stuff, you have to get a job and pay for it yourself. Like,
right.
I think that's good parenting. Or like in a household, like there's usually better bedrooms. Like I live in the master bedroom, and it has a master bath. Whereas people that live with me don't get that luxury. Why? I own the house.
Right.
And so the parents are probably gonna get the largest room, the best bathroom. They're probably gonna be able to park their cars in the garage, whereas the 16-year-old daughter or son has to park on the street and scrape their vehicle.
No, that's
and what's
true.
gonna teach them? Oh, when I move out of my house, I can dictate who parks in my garage.
So it's more incentive, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think a good parent would make their kids, you know, earn stuff. Obviously, they can't like deprive them of basic necessities.
Right.
But they can deprive them of a lot that most kids think they deserve, because other parents are just giving it to their kids, like smartphones.
Yeah, that's just good parenting.
Exactly. Did we cover it all?
What do you mean?
Oh, did we exhaust the topic?
Oh no, I got plenty more questions.
Okay, good.
I was thinking about the Nick dude.
Yeah.
And just like his story. And as these speakers are coming up, like a lot of public speakers and a lot of famous people, I feel like it's like they're good looking, they're muscular, they're, you know, just really smart usually. They're good at public speaking.
Articulate, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and so sometimes I'm like, well, how much of this is like just them being lucky, you know, and getting like, and obviously like there's a lot of work that goes into some of those things. But then I was listening to Nick, and it's like, man, he like got probably one of the worst roll of the dice, you know, as far as just where or what position you're born in,
right?
You know? And so that's kind of like no excuse a little bit. If you're dealt like a pretty awful hand in life, how do you like overcome that? How do you find the encouragement to, you know, because like one of the things, how do you find the encouragement to overcome like really tough situations? Like like that.
Yeah,
you know, that's kind of a.
And I think I was probably dealt a pretty good hand. Middle income household from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Private high school, private school education, got money for college from my great grandpa. No major disabilities, at least not at birth. I've given myself some. So yeah, it's hard to preach this because in a sense,
Right.
I've been given a lot, but guys like Nick, I think would say, in the end, you gotta find the reason why you're alive.
Yeah.
And I think you probably have to have an element of faith in God and, in Jesus ultimately.
Yeah.
Like God created me for a purpose, and then discovering that purpose. So Nick clearly has found his purpose, and he's one of the most joyful men that you ever meet. And what's his purpose? Well, to show people who have been dealt a terrible hand that their life is meaningful and they can still have joy.
Yeah.
So in that sense, those people who've been dealt a really terrible hand probably are more special in a sense, or more like important than normal people who are dealt a pretty good hand, because they're put on this planet to help inspire those who have been dealt a terrible hand, who are depressed and life is meaningless to them, and they probably want to end their lives. And so I think Nick has helped a lot of people through that, that struggle to find meaning. So I guess that's what I would say is if you think, if you've been dealt a terrible hand, you got to give it over to Christ and see what he shows you. Because you are here for a reason. Everyone is.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, like, what people think purpose is based off of just, like, worldly things.
Right.
Or, like, what the world would tell you your purpose is versus, like, what God would tell you your purpose is, and no one would choose to not have arms and legs,
Absolutely.
It's like, no, like, I don't want that. But, like, at the end of the day, he's fulfilling his purpose, which is a lot more than a lot of people can say, I think. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but sometimes I think when you don't have those things, it gives you more of a drive to, like,
overcome them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or, like, even with me, with, like I guess bodybuilding's kind of one of the examples I can think of is, like, I was always kind of the skinnier, smaller guy on soccer team,
Right.
And, like, I wanted to be big. I want to be strong. I want to be able to, like, hold my own. And so I think a lot of people that are just, like, and not to say that bodybuilding's the ends or the be all do all.
Right.
But I think a lot of people that are just born okay, or not to say that I'm not necessarily, but a lot of people just, I think, are just content with where they're at, and they don't want to, they're not really that hungry to be anything more, a little bit.
Exactly. Actually ties back into what I was saying about good parenting. Demands that you deprive your kids of certain things.
Right. Which is counterintuitive. Like, you wouldn't think that,
But if you want your kids to succeed, you certainly can't give them everything that they want. And you should probably give them even less than you want to give them. Obviously, any good parent wants to give them everything. So less than, like, you got to make them, kind of going back to a few sessions ago, you got to make them have to grind. You got to make them have to work for stuff. And ideally, you probably make them think that you're poor, even if you're wealthy. Because then they're going to appreciate things, the most important things of life, which have nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
So and then the sense of overcoming what they perceive to be a deficit, being poor and not having everything they want.
Right.
Well, number one, give them appreciation of things that, can't be bought with money. And number two, like we just said, have to work hard to achieve the things that they think they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's interesting because like growing up, I didn't get a phone until I was like 17
Yeah.
or 18.
And you had to pay for it?
I think I did have to pay for it.
Good.
I think I had to pay for it, and I think my parents paid for the data or whatever.
Okay.
But I didn't have like a phone. I didn't have like any technology like Xbox, PlayStation, Wii. I never had any of that. So I was always terrible at video games. But honestly, like, yeah, in the moment I was like, man, like my parents are so uncool. Like, why don't they let me have any of these things? Like, all my buddies have them. But looking back, it's like, wow, that was probably one of the best things they could have done for me, just as far as like making me, well, just having time to do other stuff, you know, like not just being on video games all the time and having free access to the internet.
Exactly.
At 12 years old.
Right.
So.
Have you told them that?
Probably should.
You probably should.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll watch this and.
There you go.
But you should also tell them in person.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And that's.
Yeah.
You're still pretty young. The fact that you can see that already is huge.
Yeah, I almost wish that I still didn't have full access to the internet. Should you be the provider as a man? Like, is that still necessary, do you think?
As opposed to your wife?
Yeah, or like, is that an actual biblical thing? Or is that just like kind of a traditional maybe? That's where I'm
Yeah, traditional maybe. I mean, it's as far as like, you know, prehistoric times, you know, males are generally bigger, faster and stronger, so you know, hunting is they're probably more capable or more physically capable, whereas you know, women are more geared towards, you know, domestic things, but obviously you have exceptions, right? There are probably many women on this planet who can hunt better than me, lift more than me, certainly faster than me right now because my hip. Most women are faster than me now. But yeah, generally speaking, any honest person knows that there's physical differences. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's that. But now, not many men have to go out and even farm. Like, they go to the office.
Right.
And so do women.
Right.
So, so yeah, if somebody is going to stay home and the other is going to go to work, if they're both going to go to the office either way, right, just flip a coin, you know? And
yeah.
Is a woman better at cleaning and doing dishes and, you know, reading to kids and nurturing? Not necessarily. Again, there are plenty of men who are more nurturing than many women. So I don't think there's a necessity that one parent brings in the financial,
yeah,
you know, the income, and another parent does more of the domestic stuff. I don't think so. But yes, I think both have to provide, obviously. Like, and so whether your provision is more emotional and domestic, or your provision is more, you know, economic outside the home, I don't think it. Yeah. It matters in the sense of whether you're a male or female. Now, obviously, for me, or for like some men, like they crave to go out of the house and like do business deals and network and even do manual labor. Other dudes aren't wired that way. Yeah. So, and then same with women. So I think you have to decide with your spouse. Okay. These are the things that you like to do. These are the things I like to do. obviously there's many things that you have to do as parents that nobody likes to do, and you probably have to divide those up accordingly, but you would probably ideally try to find the things that you're best suited to do. And obviously sometimes both parents have to work. Like in today's world, like it's hard to be a single income family.
Yeah.
So both might have to work, sadly. So
yeah, I wonder if it's almost like, because I think men can still be leaders of the household even if they're not being, like they can still be spiritual leaders without necessarily being breadwinners.
exactly.
But I wonder if sometimes it's almost more of a pride thing than anything. It's just like,
Oh, I'm sure.
I want to be seen as
Yeah.
the
The man who makes more money than
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So,
But then, okay, so you make more than your wife, big deal. Oh, do you then have to make more than everyone on your block or everyone in your friend group?
right.
And then what? Everyone that you know, you have to make the most money.
Yeah.
But then then everyone you've ever heard of, so you got to be like Elon Musk now and make, be almost a trillionaire. Like, where does that stop?
Yeah.
So even the idea that you have to make more than your wife, I think that's rooted in pride.
Sometimes I feel like you shouldn't be focusing on trying to make money. Like that's not in itself a worthy goal. But actually, yeah, maybe it's not a worthy goal if that's your only that's your only kind of goal, I guess. But how do you work hard and try to make money without having that be the goal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that word "only" is huge. It'd be like saying, is getting in shape a worthy goal? Should it be your only goal? Well, that's kind of silly. I mean, unless you're a professional athlete, but even then, like you have other goals, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I think, to have, first of all, I think we established we have to make money, whether we're working for somebody or we have our own business, we have to provide for ourselves and our family. Okay. So do you just shoot for the basic necessities, or I think your question is, do we try to accumulate wealth?
Yeah.
And I think we just answered, you shouldn't accumulate wealth, and that's your only goal. Okay. It should not be your only goal. Nor should getting in shape be your only goal. That you have hopefully many goals in your life, and the most important goal as Christians is to become a saint, to become the person, to become Christ-like.
Yeah.
But within that are things like getting in shape, accumulating wealth, having a good social life. Are those Christ-like things to do? And I would say, accumulating wealth obviously can be a big trap. That's, Jesus is constantly warning against wealth, right? It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven.
Yeah.
And then if you stop there, you're like, shoot.
Yeah, don't even mess with that.
Yeah, or to the rich young man, he tells, go sell everything you have and follow me. So those two, you're like, that's, I think, where Christians get that thinking, oh shoot, I can't I need to just survive on the bare minimum. But what's interesting about that, the first quote I said is the apostles then asked, well, then who can be saved?
Right.
And what did Jesus say?
All things are possible through God.
Exactly. Yeah, he didn't say, well, only the people who become monks and give up everything. No, he said, with the grace of God, anyone can be saved. And so I think what he's doing is cautioning us against the allure of wealth, of greed. So it is a huge attraction. But a similar thing can be said about, he has a similar, I would say almost a parallel with lust in women, or lust in, the opposite sex. and we can get into that. But I think there's a parallel. Like the attractions of greed and sex are extremely powerful, and we have to guard ourselves against becoming obsessed with either of them. And it takes a lifetime, I think, of. And so your Lamborghini comment, you might have been joking, but I would say, yeah, if you're focused on getting a Lamborghini, you probably are. I'm not saying you shouldn't get, like, it's sin getting a Lamborghini. I'm not saying that. But if that's your primary focus in accumulating wealth, you probably are a little off. Like,
Yeah.
I think a better reason to accumulate wealth is to, support a family, or to provide for yourself and your family so that you can do things as a family, like go on trips, or,
Yeah.
provide things, a good education, so that they can be successful and Christ-like.
What about like fitness? Because that's more relatable to me, because I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have a ton of money at the moment.
Right.
but like sometimes with fitness, I'm like, man, if I couldn't work out, or like sometimes I think about like if something happened or I got paralyzed, like that would almost be worse than losing all my money. Well, it'd definitely be worse than losing all my money.
Yeah.
But it'd almost be like, man, like what's the point anymore? A little bit. But so I feel like maybe that for me is working out and fitness. But like I also think it's such a good part of my life, and I think God has done a lot in me through that. So I don't want to idolize it.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's asked me to give it up necessarily either.
Yeah, I've been there, and I maybe still am there in some people's eyes. So I can find this very relatable. For me, maybe this isn't too extreme for some people, but I would say don't worry about it. I mean, as long as you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, like, you're being a good son. Obviously, you have no children, so you don't have to be a good dad. You're being a good friend. You're there for your friends. You're being a good employee, or you're dedicating the right time and effort to your business. As long as you're doing the things you should be doing in your state of life, I don't think you need to worry about it. Obviously, if you catch yourself being extremely vain, then maybe like keep that in check.
Yeah.
But as far as like the time commitment, I think God and reality will take care of it. Like for me,
Right.
injuring my hip was one of the worst and best things in my life,
Yeah.
because I did put a lot of my value in what I could do in the gym.
Yeah.
And that has mostly been taken away because I can't even run right now,
Yeah.
which is insane to me.
Yeah.
And I was very depressed for a while. But I've realized that this is like a blessing in the sense that I'm able to reassess my life and say, what is actually the point of life?
Yeah.
The point of life is not to be in shape or to be the fittest man on the planet, although that can be a great goal. It shouldn't be your only goal or your top goal.
Yeah.
So I think if God wants more of your heart, he thinks you're dedicating too much time to training, I think, not that I want an injury for you, but I think
Yeah.
it'll probably happen. Something will happen where
Yeah.
you have to realign your priorities. Otherwise, just
Yeah.
do what you enjoy, and
Yeah.
I think reality will take care of it.
Interesting. Yeah. I think I wish it was like easier to just realize that while you're in the middle of it, because like not that necessarily like all injuries are from God, or all like stock crashes are from God, or whatever. But,
He definitely allows them, obviously.
yeah. I don't know.
Well, yeah. If you're worried, if you're like, do I put too much emphasis on this? And ask your honest friends, and they'll probably tell you.
Yeah.
And then you might have to listen to them. But whenever my friends told me I worked out too much, I didn't listen to them. So
Right.
I'm like, you just say that because you're lazy.
You just said that because you're not in shape.
Yeah.
You're jealous.
Right. So you have to be willing to listen to them. I might not be able to do even one. There we go.
Do you want me to spot you?
No, I got it.
Like, yeah, let's go.
One more. Maybe. Nope.
Well, it's tough with sports, and I just love sports because, like, almost every life, like, principle, I feel like you can take to sports somehow.
Absolutely.
Which is why it's such a cool thing. But,
yeah.
Something that kind of reminds me of this conversation is, like, the topic of winning. And I was watching an interview with Chris Bumstead. I don't know if you know who that is. He's the defending champ for the classic physique for the Olympia. Yeah, he's pretty insane.
Yeah.
And he just had a kid, so he was like thinking about retiring. And he's a really cool guy. And he was on this podcast with this other guy, and they were talking about, well, he was like, Chris, like, why wouldn't you retire? You know, like, you have all these titles, you just had a family, like, you should just go out on a win, you know, like, why would you risk losing again?
Right.
Because then people won't remember you, like, the same necessarily.
Exactly.
And he was like, yeah, like, you want to end on a winning streak. And his response to that was like, well, I can still like be a champion without winning. That's not exactly how he said it, but basically he was saying like I don't view winning as the end goal. It's more just like, I want to know that I did my best, and that's pretty much it. And that I, you know, put in the hours, and that's a little cliche, but he was like, I think you learn more about yourself from losing than you do from winning.
Right.
And that was where I was really like, oh, dang, that's kind of crazy. Because, like, yeah, he doesn't have to risk competing again. He's got plenty of money. He's got a family.
Right.
But it's like he just loves competing. And he views himself as a champion whether he wins or loses, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of similar to just life and even like the faith. It's like you don't have to be a winner to be successful.
Right.
So.
And probably for many people, especially elite athletes, to train at that high of a level, you have to have a goal.
Yeah.
Like if you just have your garage gym and you're working out to look good enough for your wife or good enough for the neighbors, you're probably not going to train as intensely.
Right.
Whereas if he knows he has this competition coming up where he's going to be, you know, put beside the best in the world, yeah, he can't slack. And so he maybe wants that motivation to keep on his A game, even if he knows that age and other elements of life are kind of getting in the way of training how he did in his prime. He's still going to train harder with that carrot than without it.
Yeah. How do you think that like relates to like the faith, if at all?
I mean, it kind of relates to the discussion on economics for sure.
Yeah.
Like, again, where even the most elite people are going to tend toward some laziness.
Right. So like in sports, wow. Why do you even have a gold medal then? Yeah, I guess.
Exactly. So that's economically. With the faith.
I didn't even think about that.
I mean, I guess you could say, like with holiness or being Christ-like, Christ says, "Be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect," like, which is impossible. But that's the standard he wants us to measure ourselves, is against God himself, against he himself. Versus if, I'm good enough, my wife, my children love me, and my neighbors like me. If that's your standard, well, you're not going to like strive to be as Christ-like than if you're like, no, God is the one, you know.
Yeah.
He's the measure. And Of course, I don't want to get into like, oh, we have to like earn God's love. That's not true. God loves us no matter if we're the worst sinner. But the human element of striving to be better, being more and more Christ-like, needs to be there. That's the purpose of life. So,
Yeah.
so that's the gold medal. That's the goal that we all should be shooting for, is to be perfectly Christ-like.
Yeah.
And without that goal in mind, if we're just, like I said, I'm good enough for my wife, my kids, and my neighbors, we're gonna slack.
Yeah. Dang.
Especially when you're a celebrity, because everyone's gonna love you. If you're a fairly kind, good-looking celebrity, everyone's gonna like you.
Yeah.
And so you definitely have to have that measure of, well, it's not about whether people like me, it's about whether I'm daily striving to be Christ-like.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is actually just like, how do you be content with yourself without like wanting to think that other people think highly of you, that like everyone you meet. Because obviously, like, you want your family to think highly of you, but like, you can't just expect everyone to like you, and that's kind of like what I shoot for a lot of times, is like, I just want everyone to like me, and I want to be popular, I want but like, I'm really trying to work on like, how do I make it so that I'm just content with, like, I'm actually happy with who I am, and not basing that off of like other people's admiration.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, for me, and my method is probably not the best, but it's a method. Is sometimes you say hard things. You say things that aren't popular, not because they're unpopular, but because they're true.
Right.
And so, to be a Christian and to be liked by everyone is impossible.
Yeah.
You're either not hanging out with enough people, or you're not really speaking truth that often. And I'm not saying you should go out and pick fights, even though sometimes I like to do that. Yeah. So yeah, if Christ is at the center, being popular, being successful as an influencer is not a bad thing, but I think God's probably gonna purify it in a way that it's for His glory more than yours.
Yeah.
And that's where I see like Jonathan Rumi like became famous when he, at least I had never heard of him until he was literally Jesus and the chosen.
Yeah.
And now I see him all over.
Right.
And so like, that to me is what God would want from someone like you or Jonah, who've given their lives for Christ, to Christ. Like, obviously, if you went off track and pursued your own glory, you probably could achieve that. You're good looking, you're talented, but again, you won't be happy. And so He's probably going to draw you back anyway. So might as well just like see what He wants you to do. So yeah.